Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. The Supreme Court dismisses a major challenge to Obamacare. They say the Republican challengers don't demonstrate any specific harm and thus don't have the legal standing to sue. A Christian organization is denied a tax benefit. The IRS says it's because they're using the teachings of the Bible to tell people how to vote. And they say those teachings are affiliated with the Republican Party. A sheriff in Nevada says his peers nationwide are fed up with the federal government. He lives in one of two recently formed constitutional counties that vow to uphold the Bill of Rights, and he expects more counties will follow suit. And the Senate is set to vote on a Democrat-backed election reform bill that's meant to combat voter suppression. Republican senators explain why they don't support it. And over 500 police officers raid the headquarters of Hong Kong newspaper Apple Daily, citing the national security law. International authorities say it's a dire attack on free speech. Juneteenth is now an official federal holiday, and it's coming up in just a few days. President Biden signed it into law earlier on Thursday.
By making Juneteenth a federal holiday, all Americans can feel the power of this day and learn from our history and celebrate progress and grapple with the distance we've come, but the distance we have to travel, Jim.
This Saturday will mark the first time Juneteenth is celebrated as a national holiday, but White House officials said most federal employees will observe the new holiday on June 18th, since June 19th this year is on a weekend. Juneteenth marks the day when slaves in Galveston, Texas, learned of their freedom from slavery in the United States. While the legislation drew bipartisan support, some lawmakers say this is a movement by the left to further divide the nation based on race and critical race theory, which critics say is tied to Marxist ideology. Others, like Kay James from the Heritage Foundation, say this is not a woke holiday and is worthy of celebration by all Americans. The Supreme Court rejected some Republican states' legal challenge to Obamacare because it didn't meet a procedural standard. This is the third major challenge to Obamacare that the Supreme Court has declined.
The Supreme Court ruled 7-2 on Thursday that the GOP challengers to Obamacare lacked standing to sue. Justice Stephen Breyer wrote the opinion for the majority, saying the plaintiffs were not in a position to bring the claim because they didn't demonstrate any past or future harm. Legal expert Zach Smith notes that they didn't make any judgment on the arguments of the case.
Today's decision didn't address anything on the merits of the Obamacare case. Today's decision was all about standing. It basically said that the plaintiffs who brought this case were not the appropriate people to challenge the law.
While the court is reversing lower court's ruling to uphold the Affordable Care Act, Smith notes it won't overturn any lower court decisions that were made on the merit. It's only overturned based on standing. Many Republicans were disappointed with the ruling.
Well, the Affordable Care Act gets constantly woven deeper and deeper into the system. It's eventually going to be pretty hard to unravel from the system. The court had a chance to do that today and didn't do it.
But some White House officials and Democratic congressional leaders celebrated the decision.
Today's Supreme Court decision is a landmark victory for Democrats' work to defend protections for people with pre-existing conditions.
The case was brought in 2018 by Texas and 17 Republican states, plus 2 individuals. It argued the individual mandate provision in the Affordable Care Act was not constitutional. That provision put a tax penalty on all individuals who didn't get health insurance. In 2012, the court defined the mandate as a tax. But in 2017, the tax penalty was reduced to 0, and the lawsuit argues this makes the provision unconstitutional. While the lower courts had largely supported the Republicans' argument, 20 blue states and the Democrat-led House appealed to the Supreme Court. Justices Alito and Gorsuch are against the ruling. Alito argues the plaintiffs do have standing, and instead of defending the constitutionality of the individual mandate, the court simply ducks by arguing there's no standing. He believes the mandate is clearly unconstitutional. Smith says it's likely we'll continue to see legal challenges to Obamacare in the future.
In another Supreme Court decision, a Catholic foster home was given the okay to turn away same-sex couples. The city of Philadelphia had refused to work with Catholic Social Services for not placing children with same-sex couples. But the Supreme Court's 9-0 decision sets protections for faith-based foster homes. Chief Justice Roberts said that the city violated the group's religious rights by forcing them to choose between certifying same-sex couples as foster parents or going against their mission and religious beliefs. And by refusing to work with them, the city violated the First Amendment. The foster home stands by the traditional Christian belief that marriage is a sacred bond between a man and a woman. Philadelphia's spokesperson said they were disappointed in the decision, but will continue to care for their city's foster care youth, including in partnership with Catholic Social Services. The IRS turned down a Christian organization's request for a tax benefit. Their reason? Because they study and use the Bible, which the IRS says is affiliated with the Republican Party. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more from the organization's lawyer.
Christians Engage says they awaken, motivate, and empower religious believers to pray, vote, and engage in politics. They applied for tax-exempt status, a tax benefit, but the IRS has denied their request and sent a letter explaining why.
I've never seen a letter like that before, where a government agency specifically says that Bible teachings are Republican affiliated.
Lawyer Leah Patterson from First Liberty, a law firm dedicated to defending religious freedom, represents the organization. She tells me Christians Engaged does not promote political candidates or political parties, which is prohibited under the benefits rules.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So the IRS denied their request because Christians Engaged studies and uses the Bible in its work.
That's the best we can figure from the letter. As you read it, it says that it points to Christians Engaged teaching and educating believers on national issues as it relates to their belief in the Bible as the inerrant Word of God. And that's the reason that the IRS gives. It says that the Bible teachings are typically associated with the Republican Party, and that makes it a partisan organization. Now, that's completely incorrect under the law, so that's why we're appealing.
IRS exempt organization's director, Stephen Martin, said in his denial letter to Christians Engaged, while you educate voters on what the Bible says about issues, your educational activities are not neutral. The topics typically are affiliated with distinct candidates and specific political party platforms. Another section says the organization created voter guides with candidates that align with the Christian biblical value system. But Patterson denies the creation of voter guides in her letter, saying the IRS's decision violates the organization's First Amendment rights by discriminating against their religious viewpoint. First Liberty appealed the decision and expects the process to play out over the next few months. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
And Senate Leader Chuck Schumer is set to bring a voter reform bill to the floor next week. Many Democrats say the bill is meant to stop Republican states from passing voter suppression laws. But Republicans argue the bill would undermine election integrity. Today, some Republican senators explained why they plan to vote against it.
The Senate will vote next week on a voter reform bill. It's similar to the one that already passed the House. Democrats are saying that this would give voters easier access to the ballot box and reduce voter suppression. But Republicans argue that it would make voter fraud more possible since it lowers the requirement for voter ID and makes ballot harvesting possible. They also say it would give the federal government more control over how states run their elections.
Think about the policy implications of the federal government funding campaigns for federal office. That means they'll be spending millions of dollars per race, and that means not everyone can be a candidate. So they'll have to decide which candidates are legitimate and which are not.
Senator Ted Cruz going so far as to call it the Corrupt Politicians Act. This is because the bill would make it possible to take tax dollars and fund politicians' campaigns for those who are running for the House and the Senate.
If you're a California senator, you're going to get up to $80 million for your campaign.
Another thing they're skeptical about is the redistricting process. The bill would take the power away from state legislators to draw redistricting lines and give that power to a third party. We know Republicans are super concerned about that because they're expecting to gain a couple of seats in some swing areas, North Carolina, for example. And so the question becomes, if that power to draw redistricting lines is in the hands of a third party, who would that third party be and how would they draw those lines? The Senate will vote on this next week, and it's unlikely to pass because 10 Republicans would have to come on board with it. Some Republicans are calling it a show vote, saying that it's a way for Senate Leader Chuck Schumer to gain political points. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Texas is now a Second Amendment sanctuary state and a constitutional carry state. Texans don't need any permit to carry their handguns starting in September. NTD's Allison Lee reports.
Where people are saying from the federal level to the local level that Second Amendment rights are under assault, that government officials are saying, heck yes, government is coming to take your guns. Texas will not let that happen.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed 7 gun right bills into law on Thursday, and one of the bills makes Texas a constitutional carry state, meaning that from September 1st, legal gun owners don't need any permit to either open carry or concealed carry their handguns. Another bill makes Texas a Second Amendment sanctuary state.
This helps to shield Texas and Texans from overreaching federal government laws that we will not allow any Texan to enforce in the Lone Star State.
The signing ceremony took place at the Alamo, the cradle of liberty for Texas. The governor pays tribute to the men and women that defended the Alamo mission back in 1836 and explains its symbolic significance.
They fought for freedom. They fought for liberty. And that included the freedom to be able to carry a weapon. And they knew the reason why somebody needed to carry a weapon was far more than just to use it to kill game that they would eat. They knew as much as anybody the necessity of being able to carry a weapon for the purpose of defending yourself against attacks by others.
A reporter asked Abbott about a shooting in Austin last week that left a man dead. The governor said he visited the family of the victim and that it was a tragic event.
But the family members were adamant about 2 things. 1, do not let this crime committed by teenagers be a reason to eliminate gun rights in the United States of America.
As for the other 5 bills, 2 of them prohibit governments from restricting gun sales during declared disasters and from contracting with firms that discriminate against gun businesses like the NRA. One bill removes requirements for holsters. Another allows travelers visiting Texas to store firearms in their hotel rooms. And the last bill bars federal regulations for gun suppressors made and used in Texas. Allison Lee, NTD News.
Under the leadership of constitutionally minded sheriffs and elected commissioners, 2 rural counties in Nevada recently became constitutional counties. NTD speaks with the president of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association about the move. Here are the details.
Nevada's Elko and Lander counties passed resolutions to uphold the Bill of Rights in their jurisdictions, even if it means standing up against unconstitutional acts by state and federal governments. As part of the effort, the 2 county governments also joined the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. President of the association and retired sheriff Richard Mack says the lockdowns and mandates of the last year were the last straw for many sheriffs.
We're supposed to be protecting and defending the individual liberty of every person in this country. That's what we want to do, and that's really what prompted all of this, was these officials in Lander and Elko are sick and tired of watching government control us, mandate us, monitor us, and expect us to go along with unconstitutional and ungodly mandates. We're not doing it anymore, and this is just kind of a knee-jerk reaction of people who have had it up to here.
He says all public servants, including sheriffs and most police officers, swear an oath of office to uphold the Constitution. By declaring yourself as a constitutional county or sheriff, he says you're simply fulfilling your oath. Sheriff Mack says what Elko and Lander counties have done is the peaceful and effective solution millions of Americans have been praying for to take back America county by county and state by state.
What this does is it puts a great example before every county in the country. Why are you not doing the same thing?
For Americans wanting to protect their constitutional freedoms, Max says one of the best things you can do is to form a relationship with your local sheriff.
Ask him or her if they are going to be a constitutional sheriff and if they will defend your right to choose to be vaccinated, to choose to wear a mask, to choose to go to church, to choose to have a weapon in your home. Will they defend all of those rights, or will they go along with government and say, well, it's for your own good? We must get every one of them educated and let them make the choice to be a constitutional sheriff so that your choice to be free is protected.
Max says that constitutional liberties don't just go away whenever there is a government-declared emergency or crisis. He said this is something many sheriffs nationwide are thinking about. Going forward, he expects we'll see more constitutional sheriffs, counties, and eventually states. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
President Biden is back in the White House after meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin during his first international trip since taking office. What did Biden accomplish on his first meeting with Putin? NTD's Steve Lance brings us the details.
Now that the dust is starting to settle and President Biden and Putin are back in their respective countries, assessments of the U.S.-Russia talks are starting to come in.
Well, one takeaway is that there weren't that many takeaways. Both sides announced the return of their respective ambassadors to Washington and Moscow. But the return of the ambassadors really isn't something that required presidential-level attention, a face-to-face meeting in Geneva.
Following his press conference after meeting with President Putin, President Biden was heavily criticized for an exchange that he had with CNN's Kristen Collins.
Why are you so confident he'll change his behavior, Mr. President?
Yeah, I'm not confident in changing behavior. What do you do all the time? So when did I say I was confident?
You said in the next 6 months you'll be able to determine.
What I said was, let's get it straight. I said what will change their behavior. You don't understand that, you're in the wrong business.
President Biden took quite a bit of heat from even those on the left for the way that he spoke to the female CNN reporter. He later apologized just before boarding Air Force One and heading back to the U.S. In terms of substance, experts, both Democrats and Republicans, have said that not much came out of this meeting. And in terms of the overall threat Russia poses to the U.S. and the world, it is China who begs more attention.
Between the two of them, Russia is clearly the junior actor. China is the great power, competitor of the United States. It's the great 21st century challenge that the U.S. Has to face.
President Biden did seem to sidestep the question when he was asked about China and the origins of the CCP virus and whether or not he would press President Xi of China to open up the country to a proper investigation. As to what President Biden's strategy is in dealing with China, we will just have to wait and see. Steve Lance, NTD News, Washington, D.C.
Former President Trump is starting his campaign-style rallies again. The first one will be held on Saturday, June 26th at the Lorain County Fairgrounds in Ohio. It'll be Trump's first rally since leaving office in January. The last time Trump spoke was at the North Carolina Republican Party State Convention earlier in June. Trump's Save America PAC said this is the first of many appearances by the former president, and he'll support candidates and causes that further the America First agenda. The PAC is sponsoring the event. At the rally, Trump is also set to endorse former advisor Max Miller for Congress. And up next, a tragic accident in New York City. A 91-year-old man was hit by a pickup truck while trying to cross the street. He was taken to a hospital, but it's still not clear if he survived. And Google opens its first ever retail store in New York City. It has a number of exciting features. Stay tuned for more on NTD News. A 91-year-old man was struck by a pickup truck while trying to cross an intersection in Manhattan this morning. He suffered life-threatening injuries, and it's still unknown if he survived. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
A 91-year-old man was crossing this intersection at 28th Street and 8th Avenue this morning when this black truck ran him over. The man suffered life-threatening injuries, and emergency medical services took him to Bellevue Hospital for treatment. It is unknown at this time if he survived. The area was quickly taped off, and the driver of the truck stayed at the scene while police surveyed the area. Residents who cross this intersection regularly feel safe crossing it, but they understand it's not the safest intersection.
I grew up here and I lived in this neighborhood all my life, so I'm generally careful. So for myself, I feel okay. But on the other hand, these buildings, there's a lot of seniors that live here, and people most of the accidents happen with cars turning onto the streets, and I've seen it all my life. Old people getting knocked out.
Because every time I'm crossing the street right here, it's always like a jam up or something, or the cars are like zooming, trying to catch the light or something right here. So.
We spoke to some seniors near the accident, and they were more concerned about the cyclists.
Step off the curb, boom. Watch the bicycle riders.
You should have a license on the bike.
Although someone was just hit by a truck at this intersection, the people we spoke to today still feel safe crossing the streets in New York City. They advise people to always be vigilant and to know that just because you see the car doesn't always mean that the driver sees you. Jason Perry, NTD News, New York.
Brooklyn Bridge will get a new lane for bikes only. On June 21st at 9 p.m., the New York City Department of Transportation will close down the left lane of the Manhattan-bound side of Brooklyn Bridge to begin construction on the two-way bike lane. More from NTD's Jason Perry.
Since the pandemic, New York City has seen a major surge in bicycle riding. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio has committed to adding 30 miles of protected bike lanes to address the increase in bike riders. The next two-way bike lane will be built on the Brooklyn Bridge.
If you've tried to go across that path, you've seen the pedestrians, New Yorkers and tourists, often looking up at the great skyline of New York, and bicycles trying to wend their way through that crowd. It's not ideal from any perspective, either from the perspective of the tourists or from the perspective of New Yorkers trying to get around.
The new bike lane will alleviate that congestion and make it easier for cyclists to get in and out of Lower Manhattan. This will be Brooklyn Bridge's first reconfiguration in over 70 years, when the trolley tracks were permanently removed in 1950. During the construction of the new bike lane, commuters are advised to use other routes such as the Manhattan Bridge or the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. Construction of the new bike lane will be completed in early fall this year. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Google just opened its first ever retail store today in Manhattan. Now you can try out Google hardware and services firsthand. NTD's Arian Pazdar takes us there to see what it's like.
Most people are using some sort of Google software every single day. Google Maps, Gmail, or just a search engine, Google. But the tech giant also makes hardware devices, and now its first ever physical store opened its doors here in Manhattan on Thursday.
Now Google has a store. They're just going to be popping everywhere. Apple better, pick up the game.
It's really unique to be able to have like the interactive areas.
The store features a number of interactive experiences. They demonstrate Google's hardware and services in a more hands-on experience.
They want you to have experience like you're at home, and they want you to feel comfortable.
For example, the so-called sandboxes, which are similar to living rooms in furniture stores. In one of them, you can see what it feels like using smart home devices.
It is a little jarring. It's like, wow, like everything is like speaks to you, It's like, what do I talk to? What do I listen to?
In the Pixel Sandbox, you can check out camera features within a custom light installation. And in the Stadia Sandbox, you can play games. And there's the Google Imagination Space. It can feature different technologies. Right now, it's a big embodiment of a Google Translator.
It was really neat to be able to see kind of what I said and then it being able to be translated so quickly in over 100 languages.
Besides the entertaining aspect, the store also serves a functional use, of course. Customers can bring in their broken Google products, many of which will be repaired on site. Arian Pazdar, NTD News, New York.
How would your doctor like to be employed by Apple? A report suggests the tech giant is going to link data from its personal devices with a new health platform that would give you access to real doctors you could speak with through your phone. NTD's Evelyn Lee has the details.
Tech giants are trying to branch out further, this time into the healthcare industry. On Wednesday, the Wall Street Journal revealed Apple's extensive plans. The company wants to create its own medical service with Apple-employed doctors. Dr. Ken Perry says it makes sense, with all the people now getting used to healthcare at home.
They own so much of the time and space of people's home environments. They're going to see how they can take that and affect healthcare.
According to the report, Apple's thinking about linking data from its devices with virtual and in-person care. Perry says it could shorten the process and the waiting time before a patient can be diagnosed.
Rather than just you coming to the hospital and me having to admit you and put you on a monitor for 2 or 3 days, now I'm going to have some of that information before you even arrive.
Just earlier this year, Amazon launched Amazon Care. And just like its other services, speed is at the heart of it. Amazon realizes that the hospital process is inefficient, and it wants to change just that.
It's very likely for patients to be in the ER for 2 or 3 hours, which in comparison to years before is extremely quick. But what patients want is even faster than that. They want answers the moment they arrive.
Microsoft has also stepped into telehealth, offering a cloud for healthcare professionals to schedule and conduct virtual patient visits. Since healthcare is a very expensive sector, Perry says it's a great opportunity for tech companies to maximize profits.
So if these big tech companies are able to figure out how to own a vertical component in that space, then really be able to be part of not just the diagnostics, but also the delivery of healthcare, they're probably going to be able to do a really good job in minimizing costs.
He says he expects this to be a big push that patients will be willing to spend money on. According to a report by Business Insider, tech companies might encounter difficulties at first. That's especially in gaining consumers' trust, but also because of concerns about cybersecurity. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
Father's Day is this Sunday, and a new report indicates it could be a record in terms of how much people spend on gifts and other items for Dad. The National Retail Federation is predicting that consumers will shell out upwards of $20 billion. That would be the most Father's Day spending on record, and a lot more than last year's $17 billion. The National Retail Federation also says those surveyed are planning to spend an average of $174 on Father's Day items. If you're planning to get fireworks for the 4th of July, you'd better stock up. One retailer is warning of a supply shortage that began last year, saying it could impact Americans for the second year in a row. Fireworks sales exploded in 2020 after many professional displays were canceled. But the nation's largest consumer-based fireworks company, Phantom Fireworks, is advising those who want to celebrate at home to buy now. The company says shortages are due to shipment challenges in the global market, and most fireworks are imported from China. And coming up in California, a 94-year-old woman was stabbed several times by a repeat offender, but luckily she's expected to survive. Do you have a mortgage to pay? Well, one mortgage company is surprising some of its customers with an unexpected gift. One of the lucky recipients was a new home owner. Find out more on NTD News.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate co-pays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with the Give Back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month.
I called to get dental, transportation, meals, and the Give Back benefit.
With this virus situation, I called to get everything I'm entitled to. I couldn't believe I was missing out on so many benefits.
With the uncertainty of the virus, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-764-1930. That's 1-800-764-1930 now.
The wait is finally over. Shen Yun returns to the stage with an all-new production filled with beauty, majesty, and a powerful message of hope. Discover the lost culture of ancient China. Discover this season, Shen Yun 2021. Coming to the Palace Theater, June 26th and 27th. Tickets at shenyun.com/Stamford.
A 94-year-old woman in California was stabbed several times but is expected to survive. The suspect is a repeat offender, and the crime is highlighting San Francisco's new lax punishment against criminals. Here's NTD's Eileen Ang with more.
On Wednesday morning, a 94-year-old Asian woman was stabbed multiple times. The victim was transported to a local hospital and is expected to survive. Police responded to the incident and found a suspect less than 2 hours later. He was identified as 35-year-old Daniel Kolich. His criminal history includes attempted homicide, battery with serious injury, elder abuse, and more. In a tweet, the city's DA, Chesa Boudin, said they will work around the clock to support the victim and her family while also investigating this case with all our resources. But the San Francisco Police Officers Association tweeted, Chesa Boudin says he can't prosecute if SFPD doesn't arrest. This suspect was arrested 5 times in 2020 on multiple burglary charges. When he stabbed this woman, he was on an ankle monitor. What do you have to do to actually go to jail in SF? According to Nancy Tung, Deputy District Attorney who ran for District Attorney against Chesa Boudin in 2019, believes both the DA and police can work together better.
I think it's the role of the district attorney's office to, at times, be a check on law enforcement, certainly to take an independent eye and look at cases to see if you can charge them or not, to see if you can prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, to ask the police department to do more investigation if there's a shortcoming of evidence.
The incident is still being investigated, and the attack is believed to be unprovoked. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
A mortgage lending company is showing up to some of its customers' doorstep with a surprise. 2 of the lucky recipients are new homeowners in California.
Envoy Mortgage began its Gift of Home program to show gratitude to its nationwide customers during a financially challenging time. One couple in Long Beach, California received their surprise gift on June 16th, and in the box was a message from the mortgage company.
And to make life a little easier, we're paying your next mortgage payment, including tax, on behalf of Envoy team members. We appreciate you. Oh, thank you so much.
The couple purchased their first home together during the pandemic, and Delator said it wasn't easy.
Just like getting a new house and getting the furniture, we had nothing, and that was an obstacle because everything was closed for COVID.
This year, the Texas-based mortgage company says they will surprise 50 customers over the next few months. The goal is to provide essential workers up to $3,000 per household.
One investigation reveals that 2 universities in Southern California gave special perks to high school students in China. Commentators say it's driven by money. Here's NTD's Eileen Ang with more.
An investigation carried out by Insider claims that University of California, Irvine and Riverside had given special treatment to students at a private high school in China. UC Irvine reportedly offered specially arranged summer school programs for students at Pegasus California School, a private academy in Qingdao, China. The college sent admissions staffers to its campus to talk to students and their parents. UC Riverside allegedly promised to help the students become competitive applicants and allowed them to submit applications even after the deadline had passed. The schools worked with a businessman named Stephen Ma, who helped students get the upper hand in the admissions process. One former graduate from UC Riverside said he did not hear or know of anyone who received any special treatment, but he did say it's very normal because it is like doing business.
They always need money to hire, famous professors, getting more reimbursement for the labs and all kind of things. So it's kind of normal to me that, they give an easy standard for those international students because, they need money.
A China expert and senior reporter for the Epoch Times says it's not which students they admit. It's about the money and maintaining the relationship with the Chinese government.
So University of California has made China become one of its financial lifelines. So it is a general public concern that the cutting edge technologies that's still on the research stage in the UC labs does not have enough security and safety measures.
Su said this collaboration would make for a hard-to-refuse request, since the UCs would be funded by either the Chinese government or the students' private families. In an emailed response, UC Irvine stated, "Any arrangements or interactions UCI has had with the Pegasus California School are no different than those available to other high schools. We have never had any special arrangements with them." UC Riverside responded, "It's difficult to control the promises and misrepresentations made by third parties in admissions matters. No admissions promises were made by UCR to Pegasus California School." Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
Beach cleanups are popular ways for keeping waterfronts clear of garbage, but sometimes trash makes its way into the water. A California nonprofit is diving in to solve the trash problem in Lake Tahoe. Here's NTD's Cynthia Kai with more.
Lake Tahoe's brilliant clear water draws millions of visitors each year, but all those tourists bring tons of trash, and when it ends up in the water, it can damage the lake's aquatic habitats. Now a new project is underway to remove trash from the 72-mile-long lake.
When I was in Tahoe doing beach cleanups, came across some friends of mine that had done one scuba cleanup and pulled up 600 pounds of trash, and so I dove right in, quite literally and figuratively, and began seeing that there is a terrible submerged litter problem in Lake Tahoe.
The nonprofit called Clean Up the Lake is using a team of scuba divers with mesh bags. Divers fish out smaller items, such as cans and beer bottles. Heavier items are hauled out with the help of kayakers, jet skiers, and boaters. They've already brought up thousands of pounds of garbage, with some items believed to be several decades old.
So there's all this trash that has been left behind and ignored, and it's kind of sad when, things are out of sight and they're out of mind. And Lake Tahoe is so beautiful, and we talk about the clarity, and that's so extremely important. But on top of that, I think we need to clean up the lake. We need to protect what we have.
Lake Tahoe, nestled in the Sierra Nevada mountain range on California's eastern border, is the largest alpine lake in the U.S. and the second deepest lake in the United States, and it is worth all the effort.
It's not hard to see standing out here that Lake Tahoe is probably one of the most spectacular places in the world. And when you're here, I think you feel just this incredible sense of wonder, joy, inspiration.
The team plans to dive 3 days a week, down to 25 feet in depth. They hope their methods can be adopted in other lake cleanup projects worldwide. Cynthia Kai, NTD News, California.
Record volumes of imported goods are flowing into the U.S. One of the leading entry points, the Port of Los Angeles, is operating at an unprecedented level, setting 2 records the past week.
According to the latest statistics released on June 15th, the Port of Los Angeles processed over 1 million cargo containers in May. This is a jump of 74% compared to last year. It was the busiest month ever in the port's 114-year history, and a first for any port in the Western Hemisphere.
This is not only the busiest and largest, but this twin port complex together with our sister port of Long Beach. 31% of the goods brought into this country, 1 out of every 48 jobs in America, 1 out of every 9 jobs in the region comes through this port.
Last week, the Port of Los Angeles set another Western Hemisphere record of processing more than 10 million containers in a 12-month period. With a new round of $1,400 stimulus checks pouring into the U.S. economy, consumer spending is up, but the imbalance of imports with the rest of the world continues to raise the record-level trade deficit.
Our trade gap has widened now to 4.9 to 1. That's the widest import-to-export gap that we have seen in our time.
The port's top imports are furniture, automobile parts, apparel, footwear, and electronics. In exchange, waste paper, pet and animal feed, scrap metal, and soybeans are loaded here in large vessels destined for Asia. One major customer of the port is the biggest U.S. agricultural product exporter, the DeLong Company. For more than 15 years, the company has been exporting soybeans to countries like China, Japan, Vietnam, South Korea, and Taiwan. The recent uptick in coronavirus cases in the region could have an impact on U.S. trade.
We're watching very closely with the outbreak of COVID-19 in Yantian, where South China ports around the Pearl River Delta are operating right now at about 50% of capacity. 1/3 of all our vessel sailings on the inbound side emanate from South China, so this is an important market for us to continue to watch.
Meanwhile, the majority of the containers are shipped back to Asia empty as soon as they are unloaded at the LA port.
Too many Californians have lost their homes to devastating wildfires. A woman whose home fell to the flames is donating her land to study toxin-eliminating mushrooms. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on how fungi could help protect waterways from house fire toxins.
Tanjay Weltswitzer's home in the Santa Cruz Mountains burned down in a wildfire last year.
This is where our house burned down in the CCU Lightning Complex fire.
Instead of selling the land or building a new home on it, she's donating it to California nonprofit Co-Renewal to study mushrooms, oyster mushrooms. Mycologists say this fungi can break down toxins. Co-Renewal says they'll use the land to see whether the mushroom can prevent house fire toxins from potentially polluting waterways.
Our homes are built of toxic materials, unfortunately, from the insulation to the walls to double-paned windows full of weird gases. So those fires will burn it down into the really harsh chemicals that will eventually make their way to our waterways.
Reports cite California's 2018 Camp Fire as an example of the problem. Months after the fire, melted metal, wood, and plastic contaminated the water in Paradise, a town in Butte County where the fire took place.
I just packed all that spawn I had shown you a minute ago.
But can a pizza topping really prevent waterway contamination?
There's many different species of fungi that are known to break down various harsh toxic chemicals, and they've figured out that the Pleurotus species in particular is really great at breaking down petrohydrocarbons, petroleum-based products.
Essentially, these mushrooms will be grown near the burn site to filter out toxic runoff. Co-Renewal Executive Director Maya Elson says they're expecting this to be a cheap, protective solution.
Our hope is that, with this coming fire season and the one after that and the one after that, we can continue this research and develop some methodologies that are affordable, that are ecological, and are doable, are easy.
Similar tests are underway in several other burn zones throughout Northern California. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Coming up, international rights groups slammed Hong Kong authorities after local police mobilized over 500 officers in a raid on the headquarters of local newspaper Apple Daily. Hong Kong's security law has seeped into the movie sector. We interview a longtime Hollywood producer to get his take on the matter. That and more here on NTD News. A local Hong Kong newspaper saw an unexpected holdup this morning when 500 police officers raided its headquarters. It's the second police raid of a company property in just 1 year. Here are the details.
Hong Kong police dispatched over 500 officers on Thursday to raid Apple Daily headquarters. They arrested 5 of the newspaper's directors under the city's national security law passed by Beijing last year. Authorities accused them of what they called collusion with a foreign country or external elements to endanger national security. The charge carries a maximum penalty of life in prison. The paper's founder, Jimmy Lai, is already serving a prison sentence for his role in the city's pro-democracy protests in 2019. It's the second time the media outlet's headquarters were raided in less than a year. In August 2020, just a month after the national security law went into effect, 200 Hong Kong police stormed the newsroom for the first time. Stephen Butler serves as Asia coordinator of the Committee to Protect Journalists. He explained in a statement, The arrests of 5 executives at the pro-democracy Apple Daily today under Hong Kong's Orwellian national security law destroy any remaining fiction that Hong Kong supports freedom of the press. The latest raid began early in the morning in the name of a search operation. In a separate press release, officials revealed that the executives' homes were also searched. A national security official later confirmed that Hong Kong authorities had frozen about $2.5 million in assets from 3 companies tied to Apple Daily. The official also touched on a series of 30 Apple Daily articles from 2019, encouraging global sanctions on China, saying they were linked to the current collusion charge. The city's national security law took effect on June 30th, 2020. It's not retrospective, meaning the law doesn't apply to anything done before that time. So it's unclear why officials now consider the articles evidence.
The raid on Apple Daily is causing a stir in the international community. The British Foreign Secretary commented that the raid shows Beijing is using the national security law to target dissenting voices, not tackle public security. A European Union spokesperson said in a statement that the raid further demonstrates how the national security law is being used to stifle media freedom and freedom of expression in Hong Kong. Taiwan's foreign minister posted his frustration on Twitter, saying authoritarianism is waging a brutal war on Apple Daily Hong Kong, a desperately endangered symbol of freedom in Hong Kong. He added, "I'm out of words to describe my anger and sadness at witnessing this tragedy." And Hong Kong's film censors now have the power to ban movies that they deem a threat to national security. That's after authorities updated their film censorship guidelines. NTD interviewed a longtime Hollywood producer to get his insights on the matter. NTD's Don Ma has more.
Hong Kong's national security law has officially seeped into its entertainment sector. The city's recently updated guidelines for film censors say if a movie amounts to an offense endangering national security, then the censor should prohibit it from being shown. Longtime Hollywood movie producer and former president of DMG Entertainment, Chris Fenton, tells NTD he's not surprised that the law has taken hold of the entertainment space. But he says Hollywood won't go out of its way to cater to the national security law solely to gain access to the Hong Kong market. That's because it's not significant enough. But here's what he says Hollywood will do instead.
The national security law, as it applies to Hong Kong, is also one that can apply, obviously, to China too, mainland China. So if Hollywood is placating the Chinese Communist Party with a particular movie for the mainland China market, that's also going to work for the Hong Kong market. A lot of industries, Hollywood included, are now looking at the territory as if it's just part of the PRC itself, and as if
And it's very possible that Hollywood will continue to placate to the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. Fenton says despite U.S. politicians showing a firmer stance on China, Hollywood doesn't appear to be following suit.
I mean, obviously, we're seeing Washington, D.C. on a bipartisan basis, both Democrats and Republicans start to come together on trying to push back Chinese Communist Party encroachment on American rights and American laws. But we're not seeing it from Hollywood just yet. In fact,
Fenton has worked on blockbuster movies like Iron Man 3 and Looper. He also wrote a book that takes a close look at Hollywood and China, titled Feeding the Dragon.
Yeah, well, one of the things that my book does is talk about promotion of China almost as if it's a commercial, right? The way we looked at getting the Chinese government on board with supporting a movie and allowing us access to the market was how do we make China and the Chinese government look as good as possible to get
Hollywood's placating to Beijing will ultimately affect what audiences get to see on screen. Fenton gives us an example of this from his personal experience.
So in the book, I talk quite a bit about 2 particular movies that we did it with. One was Looper, a Bruce Willis, Joseph Gordon-Levitt movie, where we actually changed the future of where that movie took place 40 years in the future from today to China. It used to be in the script, before we got a hold of it, France. And Bruce Willis, instead of marrying a French woman in the movie, he married a Chinese woman who he met in China, played by...
The producer reveals an eye-opening detail on what Beijing's endgame is for Hollywood. The CCP wants to use movies to promote communism as the best form of government.
So if you look at what they would particularly like in movies that come in from the outside, are movies that promote that idea that the Chinese Communist Party, run by Xi Jinping, is a fantastic form of government. They want the message that China has the best form of government globally. And that is what their ultimate goal is with these particular films that come from Hollywood. And that's the pressure that...
But Fenton also points out something encouraging. That is, consumers, various media, and politicians are taking notice of what Hollywood is doing. And they're putting more pressure on the film industry to stop it from catering to Beijing. Don Ma, NTD News.
Coming up, an English fan made a special portrait of a Danish footballer who collapsed on the pitch last Saturday. The 29-year-old player suffered a cardiac arrest during a Euro 2020 match.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. For example, you get my 6-piece towel sets, regular $109.99, now only $44.98, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com.
Two big sponsors of Euro 2020 were publicly shunned by footballers this week. One expert says big brands may need to rethink their strategy. NTD's Joanne Robson has the details.
Big brands sponsor big events. That's how sponsorship works, and it's a win-win situation for many. But after bottles of Coca-Cola were moved aside at a press conference by Portugal captain Ronaldo, more than £3 billion were wiped off the company's market value. Neil Graney, assistant professor at Durham University's Business School, says the big brands will recover from the incidents, but this might trigger a rethink.
I think what kind of the bigger brands need to concern themselves with is two things really in terms of how they activate their sponsorship. Is such things as Coca-Cola bottles or Heineken bottles in press conferences, is that outdated? Is there better ways of kind of activating that sponsorship?
One day after the Coca-Cola incident, France midfielder Pogba removed a bottle of Heineken beer at a news conference after he was named the man of the match. Pogba is a practicing Muslim.
Obviously looking ahead to the next World Cup next year, then alcohol kind of sponsorship is going to be a real problem with Qatar 2022. So there are some natural developments that will kind of realign sponsorship deals with the likes of UEFA.
Graney believes the big brand's money is too much for the UEFA to turn down. But he says the big brands themselves will need to rethink what they want to be affiliated with. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
Danish footballer Christian Eriksen, who collapsed on the pitch last Saturday, will be fitted with a heart-starting device. The 29-year-old suffered a cardiac arrest during a Euro 2020 match. Since then, many fans have sent their well wishes. One English fan made a special portrait of him. NTD's Eddie Aitken has more.
To celebrate the recovery of Christian Eriksen, who suffered a cardiac arrest on the pitch during a Euro 2020 match, an English football fan has built a portrait of the Denmark midfielder using 500 coloured cubes. David Wright from Huddersfield says he was shocked and feared the worst. After Eriksen made his first public comment, Wright decided to make the portrait as a celebration. He says he also made cube portraits of other famous people. 29-year-old Eriksen posted a picture of him giving a thumbs up in a hospital bed and said, "I'm fine under the circumstances." He also thanked fans for their greetings and messages. Eriksen collapsed just before half-time in the match against Finland and was taken to hospital after receiving CPR on the pitch. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox. We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.